She warned them. She wrote it down. And they buried it. Until now. What Diana left behind was never meant to surface, but it just changed the monarchy forever. It was supposed to be a routine task, an administrative ritual buried beneath centuries of protocol and dust. Deep within the archives of Windsor Castle, Princess Anne had been overseeing the royal succession exhibit for the upcoming royal jubilee, a carefully curated display of ancient documents, handwritten lineage scrolls, coronation records, and royal testaments that hadn't seen daylight for decades. It was history in its rawest form, hidden in plain sight. But what began as a quiet archival process ended with King Charles sobbing behind locked doors. Because Princess Anne had found something no one was ever meant to see, Princess Diana's secret final will. There had always been whispers, muted rumors, speculation in tabloid margins, hushed voices behind palace curtains. A second will, an unsanctioned letter, a private declaration never submitted to the Crown's legal counsel. Buckingham Palace denied it vehemently every time it resurfaced. All her affairs were settled, they insisted. There is nothing left undiscovered. But that wasn't true. Not completely. Diana's loyal butler, the one man she trusted when the rest of the institution turned cold, had kept something hidden. A slim, sealed envelope, dated just weeks before the crash in Paris. It bore no royal stamp, only her unmistakable handwriting, to be opened when the time is right. Before we reveal the secret will that shattered the royal family, make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap the bell, because what you're about to hear may never be spoken of by the palace again. And had been flipping through old boxes of family history, idly curious, when she saw it. Hidden inside a hollowed-out book beneath documents on the Hanoverian line. She froze. Her heart pounded as she ran her fingers across the seal. The weight of it wasn't physical. It was emotional, historical, dangerous. Without alerting anyone, she took it straight to her private quarters. No aides, no advisors, no pomp. She sat at her desk, hands trembling, and broke the seal. What she read was not a legal will in the traditional sense. It was a manifesto, a reckoning, a mother's last plea to the world, and a final strike against the institution that, in her words, drained my soul and denied me my truth. It named her sons, William and Harry, as her legacy. It demanded protection, honesty, and above all, freedom. But the most jarring detail was her scathing condemnation of how the monarchy treated her, and who they replaced her with. Diana's words were raw, unfiltered, personal. She described Charles as a man torn by duty and guilt, who must one day choose one. And then, she named Camilla. Let it be remembered, she wrote, that my children should never be under the guidance or influence of the woman who watched me fall while pretending to smile. Let history be honest, even if the crown is not. She wasn't just speaking to her sons. She was speaking to the country, to the world. Princess Anne sat silently for a long time. The words rattled in her bones. She thought of her brother, now King Charles, and how this would crush him. But Anne had always stood apart from the royal theatrics. She had no taste for pageantry. Her loyalty was not blind, and she knew she had a responsibility to deliver this to the king. Quietly, without ceremony, she walked through the halls of Buckingham Palace and handed the envelope to a footman. To the king. Alone, she instructed. No one saw Charles for hours. Not even Camilla. He sat in his study, alone with Diana's handwriting. The same loops and slants he remembered from their early days. The same scent of honesty and rebellion that had terrified the establishment. He read every word. Slowly. Then again. And again. Witnesses later recalled that he emerged pale, eyes swollen with grief, lips sealed. He cancelled 3 engagements over the next 2 days, one of them a diplomatic summit in Scotland. Aides whispered nervously in corridors, "The past has returned, and it's louder than ever." Behind closed doors, Buckingham became a powder keg. Camilla, furious and visibly shaken, confronted Charles in his chambers. "It's slander," she hissed. "She's been dead for decades and she's still pulling the strings?" Charles didn't respond. Not immediately. He looked past her, his thoughts elsewhere, maybe back to a young girl in a sapphire dress, waving from the steps of St. Paul's Cathedral. Or maybe he was hearing the paparazzi flashes that haunted every corner of Diana's life. Camilla demanded the document be buried. No one outside this palace needs to know it exists. But Anne was not so easily silenced. She'd kept a copy. And she made it clear, if Charles chose secrecy, she would go public. "Diana deserves her voice, even in death," she said during a tense meeting with senior advisors. Especially in death. The staff was divided. Some feared a constitutional crisis. Others feared public wrath. But one thing united them. This was unprecedented. Nothing in the royal handbook had prepared them for a ghost will. A document not ratified but written with thunder. And with William and Harry out of the country, both living drastically different lives, how they would react became the next source of fear. William was the first to be informed, and requested a private video call from Balmoral. She read sections of the letter aloud, her voice unwavering. William didn't interrupt. Not once. At the end, he simply said, "I always knew she left something. I just didn't know it would feel like this." And then, the people deserved to hear her. Not through gossip. Through her own words. That was all Anne needed to hear. But Harry, who now lived oceans away and had distanced himself from the institution, reacted differently. Through a trusted source, he obtained a copy. His response arrived in the form of a message relayed through a journalist known to be close to the Sussexes. "You silenced her in life. Don't do it in death." Charles was devastated. 2 sons, both grieving in different ways, and both pushing him to relive his greatest regret. Outside the palace, the public caught wind of the drama. As leaks surfaced and speculation intensified, protesters began to gather. The gates of Buckingham became a wall of signs and chants. "Let Diana speak. We deserve the truth. Don't hide her voice." For the first time since the Queen's death, the monarchy stood at a crossroads, not of lineage, but of legacy. Pressure mounted. Media outlets clamored for confirmation. Was there a secret will? Did it really contain a warning about Camilla? Why had it never surfaced before? Some accused the palace of forgery. Others praised Anne for her defiance. But behind the scenes, the tension had reached unbearable levels. Charles began to unravel. One aide confided to the press, "He walks the halls at night. Doesn't speak. It's as if he's waiting for Diana to walk in and forgive him." Camilla became increasingly isolated. Public opinion soured quickly. Old footage of her and Charles leaked, side glances, secret meetings, exchanges that once seemed romantic now viewed through a harsher lens. Every move she made was scrutinized. Every public appearance was met with protest. The press began calling it the specter of Diana, a haunting the monarchy could no longer bury. At a private meeting between senior royals, including William and palace legal advisors, the matter of publication was raised. "If we don't publish it, it will be leaked," said one advisor. William agreed. "She wrote it for us. For the world. And if we hide it, we fail her again." And offered a compromise, an official palace statement, followed by a public reading of the letter by an impartial historian. Charles resisted. He feared it would fracture what little public trust remained. But silence was no longer an option. Meanwhile, Harry released a subtle but pointed video, standing in front of a garden, dressed in black. He never said Diana's name, but his words were unmistakable. "Some legacies are inconvenient, but that doesn't make them any less true." Days later, Charles finally broke. In a rare live appearance, he addressed the nation. His voice was hoarse, his hands visibly trembling. There are moments when the past speaks louder than the present, he said. And when it does, it is not our place to silence it, but to listen, to reflect, and to learn. He confirmed the discovery of the document. He did not read its contents, but he promised transparency. The will would be authenticated, archived, and shared with the public in accordance with Diana's final wishes. The statement sent shockwaves across the world. Social media exploded. Candlelight vigils were held outside Kensington Palace. A special BBC broadcast aired the full letter, narrated over a montage of Diana's life, from her wedding to her activism to the final day in Paris. Millions watched. Many wept. For a moment, it was as if she had returned, not in body, but in truth. But inside the palace, the crown was cracking. Camilla withdrew from public view entirely. Her scheduled appearances were cancelled indefinitely. William rose in stature. Polls showed a surge in support for him and Catherine, while Charles's numbers plummeted. Advisors feared this scandal could accelerate the timeline of his abdication. Whispers of a transition plan began to circulate, and, once a silent figure, now became the moral compass of the institution. In the end, Diana's final move wasn't loud. It wasn't vengeful. It was strategic, calculated. A chess piece moved with elegance and finality. She had waited, from beyond the veil, until the institution least expected it. And in doing so, she reshaped the conversation about monarchy, motherhood, and memory. So now we ask you, what would you do if your mother left behind a letter condemning your second wife and warning the world about her fate? Would you honor it? Or would you bury it, hoping time would forget? Charles had made his choice. Tap subscribe and join us tomorrow as we uncover a chilling question. Did Queen Elizabeth know about the will all along? And if so, why didn't she act? But the palace's decision to release the will didn't settle the storm. It ignited a new one. Legal experts debated its legitimacy. Was it binding? Symbolic? Could it override the official documents Diana signed under pressure during her divorce? Some argued that the emotional weight of the letter outweighed any legal technicality. Others warned that letting personal vendettas shape public policy could destabilize the monarchy's future. One thing was clear. Diana had spoken from the grave, and now every citizen had an opinion. Inside Clarence House, Camilla's world was collapsing. Charles was distant, almost unreachable. The warmth that once defined their late-in-life romance was gone, replaced by cold civility and political calculation. She tried to reach out, offering to step back temporarily, suggesting private advisors to manage the fallout, but Charles didn't respond. For the first time since they reunited, Camilla felt exiled. Not by the public, but by the man she had waited a lifetime for. Whispers began to swirl in Parliament, too. If the king was emotionally unfit to carry out duties, could the Privy Council intervene? Constitutional scholars popped up on every news network, dissecting obscure clauses. Could William be named Prince Regent sooner than planned? Would Charles abdicate? While no concrete moves were made, the air was heavy with anticipation. The royal machine, normally so silent and precise, had started to glitch. In the midst of it all, William took an unexpected step. He arranged for Diana's letter to be displayed, temporarily, at Kensington Palace, where she had once lived and loved and suffered. The exhibit was simple. A single glass case, velvet-framed, beneath soft lights. Visitors walked through silently, reading her words as if in church. People wept. Mothers held their daughters' hands. Men stood frozen, reliving the people's princess in a way no documentary could ever capture. Across the Atlantic, Harry made a quiet pilgrimage of his own. He visited Diana's grave at Althorpe. Alone, no press. A local villager spotted him leaving flowers and reciting something under his breath. Later, in a rare podcast interview, he said only, "There are things only a mother can say, and we heard her say them." Finally. His voice cracked on that last word. Meanwhile, Queen Camilla's approval rating nosedived. Editorials questioned her legitimacy, not just as queen consort, but as a stabilizing presence in the monarchy. Charles's team debated a strategy. Should she retreat entirely? Should she issue a statement? In the end, she chose silence. But that silence was deafening. In royal circles, saying nothing often says everything. A deeper revelation also emerged from the documents and had discovered. Alongside Diana's handwritten letter was a list. A private ledger of charities and initiatives she wanted her sons to carry on. Some they already did, like her work with AIDS patients and landmine victims. But others had been quietly dropped over time. Forgotten. One note read, "This world will forget women like me unless my sons remind it." That line hit hard, especially for William, who began rekindling efforts to fund Diana's lesser-known campaigns. And when he did, the press took notice. Headlines read, "William revives Diana's mission. The princess's legacy rises again." It was more than optics. It was strategy. As the crown wavered, William and Catherine surged ahead, becoming the faces of a newer, more emotionally aware monarchy. Every interview, every public appearance now carried the weight of Diana's ghost. And yet, Charles continued to shrink. The man who had waited longer than any heir in British history to ascend the throne now looked like he was retreating from it. One night, a viral video made waves across the internet. An elderly woman outside Kensington Palace, standing in the candlelit crowd, was asked why she had come. Her response, "Because Diana stood up for us. And now it's time we stood up for her." The video reached 10 million views in 48 hours. Hashtags exploded. Hashtag Diana's final move. Hashtag let her speak. Hashtag crown in crisis. Royal protocol meetings became panic rooms. Damage control strategies were leaked. Anonymous sources claimed Charles had offered to quietly fund an educational trust in Diana's name to quell public backlash. But it was too late. The narrative had moved beyond control. It wasn't about reconciliation anymore. It was about reckoning. And yet, deep within the turmoil, one chilling detail remained largely ignored. A single line from Diana's letter, "If this is ever read, it means they failed me again." The "they" was never clarified. Was it the press? The monarchy? Charles himself? The ambiguity became its own sort of riddle, its own kind of haunting. Journalists combed through Diana's final days again, looking for clues. Who had she spoken to? What meetings had she scheduled? What else was lost in that Paris tunnel? Even Prime Minister Rishi Malhotra weighed in during a press conference. It's not the place of government to interpret personal letters, but it is the place of leadership to learn from the pain of the past. Subtle, but sharp. He was sending a message, not just to the monarchy, but to the nation. At this point, what started as one lost document had become a full-blown crisis. Not just for the crown, but for the very identity of the royal family. Were they relics, or reformers? Guardians of tradition, or prisoners of it? In the privacy of her residence, and made one final move. She had kept a personal recording of herself reading Diana's will aloud, in her own voice, unedited, unpolished. She sent it to William, and in a message attached, simply wrote, "She wanted truth. This is yours to share, when you're ready." Weeks later, William released it. Not through a press conference or staged address, but through a live stream from Diana's memorial garden, surrounded by white roses. He didn't appear on camera. Only her words, in Anne's voice, echoed through millions of devices across the world. And in that moment, Diana's voice wasn't a whisper from the past. It was thunder in the present. Now, imagine being Charles. A king not by triumph, but by attrition. A man who had spent decades waiting for his moment, only for it to be overshadowed by the echo of the woman he wronged. Can a man rule if his soul is still grieving? Can a monarchy survive if its past keeps knocking louder than its future? The world is watching. Not just for pomp and pageantry, but for truth, authenticity, humanity. Something Diana gave effortlessly, and the institution denied her until her final breath. And so, we ask you, if your mother left behind a letter condemning your second wife, if she predicted the very crisis you now live through, if her final plea to the world was, "Don't let them silence me again," would you honor her? Or would you hide her? Because King Charles was given that choice, and the crown will never be the same. If you found this story as powerful, haunting, and unforgettable as we did, like this video, tap that subscribe button, and ring the bell so you never miss an episode of the royal truths they never wanted you to hear. Tomorrow, we'll take you even deeper. Did Queen Elizabeth know about Diana's final will all along? If so, why didn't she act? And what else did she keep buried in the royal archives? Stay tuned, because this is only the beginning. Subscribe now, because history isn't written by the victors anymore. It's written by the voices they tried to silence.